So I should say, first of all, Creative Commons, it's a global organization, obviously, and then within each jurisdiction we have an affiliate team, and in the UK our affiliate team is based at University College London. We live within the computer science department. We have the only lawyer in computer science, which is rather unusual, and we do like text and data mining as well. So what I'd like to talk about is partly just to give an overview of what's happened with the version 4 licenses, which are rather new, talk a little bit about some of the new capabilities that version 4 has brought, particularly around data, and also just some of the questions that we get commonly. So first of all, I'm sure you all know Creative Commons very well in the publishing world, but just to give a simple overview, the idea, Creative Commons is now 11 years old, and the idea of Creative Commons licenses was to make it simple for people to retain copyright and still license in a friction-free sort of way by associating different types of licenses, non-commercial use, non-derivative use, or simply to provide attribution on things. All Creative Commons licenses are generated, are authored in 3 ways. There's a human-readable license saying you can do this, but you can't do that. There is a machine-readable license which allows you to query content and find out what licenses are available. And then there is the legal code, the actual lengthy sort of legal sort of text for the license. And on the Creative Commons website, it's possible to go in and use a license wizard to generate those 3 layers of licenses for yourself. For example, to create the XML that you might want to embed in your file for the legal readable code. One of the things we're working on at UCL as well is we have a project called the Visible Rights Project, which we're working on. It's a collaboration between a few partners, and we're actually trying to extend this kind of thinking to create a rights wizard to let people understand their rights and create licenses that go beyond Creative Commons as well. So over time, as those things come along, we'll be able to circulate more about that. Creative Commons version 4, so it's very recent. This is the main excitement for us about Creative Commons 4.0 is that it's now truly international. It used to be quite a lengthy process of going jurisdiction by jurisdiction and making sure that that country's copyright legislation married up with the Creative Commons licenses, and people, a volunteer group of lawyers in each country, in each jurisdiction, would go through this process. One of the reasons it took quite a long time for version 4.0 licenses to come about is because all that work, that hard work, was done at the outset to try and harmonize across jurisdictions, and it makes life so much simpler. I think the first 70 or so translations, that the licenses finally were released in December last year, and I think within 2 months the first 70 translations were completed. With version 3.0, I think that was several years actually, just because of the jurisdictional differences. So it's been a much faster process. There's still several translations in the works. I know the Welsh translation is still about 4 months off, but we're getting there. So very, very useful. The simplicity that brings in terms of maintaining the license is just immense, very, very useful. So we'd really encourage anyone who's using Creative Commons version 2, version 3 licenses to update those and re-release your objects as you're able to. The other thing that it includes for the first time is really some other types of rights aligned with copyright. So, for example, performance rights and database rights. So it's really been quite a comprehensive exercise. I think in jurisdictions around the world, many bodies, the EU, for example, are trying to simplify copyright. So everyone's got this on their agenda to just try and make this commercially less onerous to maintain and to live with. But similarly with Creative Commons, so quite a major effort has gone on there. It was very frustrating, I think, for people within the Creative Commons community to always just, there was probably a 4-month period where we all thought the licenses were going to be ready the next week for about 4 months. But all that was good investment because they are very, very good now. So just speaking about databases as well, a database is considered proper. It's not a creative work normally. So because copyright covers creative works, Creative Commons licenses traditionally have covered creative works, but this time databases are included as well, and that follows some European rules about sui generis database rights. So with version 4 licensing now, data can also be covered and licensed, and that applies both to the schema or the data model and also the underlying data. So that's very useful. It follows on with from some EU legislation. I think in the US these licenses can still be used, but there isn't. There is still not no other legislation that helps the data be considered as part of copyright. But a Creative Commons license can do this. It simplifies data mining. It can simplify it by just making it known what can be used. I should mention as well that within Creative Commons there is also a public domain dedication as well. So with Creative Commons, you don't have to reserve some rights. You can reserve no rights and say, look, I'm done. This is my creative work. It is now open for the wide world to use. So that exists as well as a license that can be used. One of the things we do, well, both across Creative Commons and the various jurisdictions, is we get a lot of questions and people kind of writing and asking things. And I just thought it might be interesting to talk about some of the things we get asked quite frequently. One is, can licensing be changed after release? We've been told, a lot of people have said, well, it's all very well me using Creative Commons licenses, but what if I change my mind next year? Can I do that? And actually the answer is no, but for some good reasons, and there are some things to consider as a consequence. One is, as publisher, if you are granted a license and you're incorporating the licensing from many tributaries into a work, you want to know those aren't changing every 5 minutes. That would be a bad thing. So by assigning a copyright, you have assigned that copyright. That's what you've done. It's now over. And also, this reflects the real world as well. Once something's on the internet, it's in the wild. You can't control it anymore. And so it kind of, that's almost a bigger threat, I would say, than the licensing associated with a creative object. The other thing to note is just that creative works do evolve over time. There are new additions and updates and different versions, and each of those is a new work. So over time, one can associate a new set of copyright, a new set of rights with a new work. It's a new work, so that can be done. And also, we're all aware, I'm sure in this conference, about how important the open movement is generally, and so the idea of changing your mind on copyright rights that you granted a year ago is kind of against the grain for the open movement generally. The other thing we get asked is, how many Creative Commons licenses are there worldwide? And Creative Commons used to count these. I think that went on until about 2004, and then people stopped because it became impossible. So I know that there are 1.4 billion Creative Commons licensed objects within Flickr alone. So we'll have to say billions, but we just don't know. And one of the things that we're very interested in doing from the UK Creative Commons affiliate is creating a mechanism for tracking these things, and just looking at how that might work, because we want to look at the demographics of Creative Commons. One of the areas I suppose that I know best is moving images, and there are some specific issues about tracking, because you have clips, you have the whole work, you have things bundled into various different compositions, and so tracking is quite hard. If you're a news or agency, for example, you want to know, well, how has this thing appeared in a film, in many documentaries, and how is my clip doing, and what was it part of to begin with? So we're looking quite hard at areas like that. The other thing to mention is I suppose also related to media is tiered licensing. I know for moving images, this is becoming very popular, so that people might license their web browse versions of media under a Creative Commons license, but then retain the copyright to higher quality for commercial licensing. That's the Australian Broadcast Corporation does that. An increasing number of people are, for example, to allow them to be used for open educational resources, or just to explore the economics of releasing a tier of content openly and seeing if that then drives commercial business in other areas. So those are just some things that come up. And I think that's, yes, all I would just summarize, just to conclude, I'd just say version 4 licenses, I would recommend them to anyone to use, because it really is going to make our lives a lot simpler in the Creative Commons landscape. Yeah.
Around this question of can licensing terms be changed after release, is this just honesty of the community, or are there any ways of implementing that restriction?
I think that it's because the terms can't be changed. If you have like a creative object and then you associate a license with it, you can't take it back again, and so those are the terms. And we talked a little bit earlier about the idea of can you make it so that a single source is used for that, and I think there probably are things that can be used, but I think overall you have to emphasize the positive side of things. So if there are fabulous services that Crossref or various ways where you really want to use a service positively to go and retrieve the object, then if there are sufficient benefits, then there's some evidence that people use that. I know one of the projects we have within our group is looking at a vast corpus of like web searches and Twitter feeds. So it started out Firehose side, and now we get I think 1 million tweets a day. It was 40 terabytes at the beginning of like little searches, and now it's bigger than that. But with this body of stuff, you can find out such rich information. It's being used for like medical research. You're looking at how prescription drugs work over time by sort of seeing if people have searched for sore back, and then later they're taking a certain drug, and then later still they're sort of they can't keep their food down or something. So it's but I think it's really all about positive things. So if you build something that's very beneficial, then I think people will come back and use it. And I think also citations are very valuable. So and we provide a UK MIR for CiteCRX data set for journal citations, and I think that people do they need this data. So in my view, it just has to focus on the positive, and like are there sort of benefits of going back to a source, or or being able to beam up, you know, data to show tracking usage. But we'd like to do more. So anyone interested in that, please do let us know.
Hi, I'm Robert Yanello from the University program. I was just very interested to find out a little more about the tiered licensing, especially from the usage of video. So do you have to be quite clear at the outset that you do have a tiered license, that you know, say for example, a lower quality of the video is available for under the CC license, and then you have a professional quality video available afterwards? Or can you do that later? So, you know, can you release the lower quality immediately under the CC license and then do something with the higher grade later on?
Yes, you can. I mean, it's a fortunate world, and in contrast to text, where you know the words are the valuable thing. With video, there are layers of objects, so that's considered the work. So a browse quality version is not considered the whole work, and therefore you can license that under a Creative Commons license, and then still later on decide what you're going to do with your high resolution. And this happens within moving images. This happens as people iteratively scan and improve the quality of their raw media if they're sort of bringing things in from film or video. You know, the way somebody would have done that 10 years ago is rather different than 5 years ago and today. And so that's a valuable thing to have. You're creating new rights by creating a new instance of the media. So that's possible. Yeah.